with the Sunshine Coast Regional District. So we're really pleased that the Regional District is able to share their staff with us. And she joined us just this week with our audit in full swing. And it's been wonderful to have such an experienced payroll person on hand. So
thank you.
Yeah.
And her full name again?
Is Sherry Chimiak.
Sherry Chimiak. Okay. Well, there she is. I see her. Sherry, do you want to put your video on so we can see you and recognize you in the shopping center, which is always important.
Always important. Yeah, she does share an office with our manager of finance, so she may not be able to have a video. But
okay.
In your email.
We're really pleased that she's able to join us.
Are you in this meeting? Are you in the camera part?
No, I'm not actually.
Yeah,
not even me.
Okay. Sherry, welcome. And thank you for joining us, and we look forward to working with you over the years. So you're with a good team, we can tell you that. Thank you. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order and ask first of all for approval of the agenda. Councillor Ludwig, Councillor D'Andrade, thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. We're going to go directly to reports. We have the Director of Finance on board for 3.1, which is the preliminary general operating, and also for 3.2, so which is the preliminary 2022-26 general capital budget update. So Director of Finance, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So I'll be doing the first part, the general operations update. And so this is really the purpose of this report. It's a very brief one. It's just to provide the committee with an update on the projected and operating surplus as a result of changes that have been made to date in the budget discussions. And so the general operations preliminary budget was presented initially on March the 8th in a committee of the whole, and that reflected a 2% tax increase to taxation and a revised projected surplus of just over $100,000. At that meeting, as part of the discussions, or actually that was the second meeting that general operations was presented, sorry about that. At that meeting though, as part of the discussions, and this was relation to the future policing costs and setting money aside, the committee recommended that the 5% annual policing reserve allocation be reduced by 2.5% to 2.5% just for 2022, and that would allow some funds to be available, more funds to be available to cover taxation funding for capital projects. And so this now results in a revised surplus for 2022 of just over $192,000. And so this is the amount of taxation funding that's available to support projects and capital items this year. And the next item on the agenda is Director of Infrastructure Services, and he's going to provide an update to the projects and the capital items for the committee's review. And this is an update from the previous discussion, which happened just last week at March 15th meeting. And so if after that review, the taxation funding that is required exceeds the $192,000 that we do have available in operations, then an additional tax increase will be required, but it just will depend on what the committee decides today. And ideally, at the end of today's meeting, the committee does provide final direction so I can develop a tax rate, and then we can go forward with the next set of meetings. And so next steps, really, today we have the second discussion for the committee for the general operations, general capital and projects budget. And then tonight we have the budget dialogue consultation, that's at 7 to 8:30. And then following that and discussions today, the March 29th meeting is a report out from the dialogue, as well as the confirmation of final direction that's given to staff. And then from then on, I start doing building bylaws and tax rates. And that's all aiming for tax rate bylaws to be adopted late April, early May, to make sure we get those in place before the May 15th deadline. So that's just a quick update about the operations as a preliminary before you start talking capital in the next portion of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So first of all, I'll have a motion to receive the report. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ludwig, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. So what I'm hearing and what I understand in looking at the tables, there's no change other than the RCMP reduction, the RCMP 5% to 2.5% from the previous time we saw this particular operating budget. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Council, any questions? Councilor Dean.
Thank you. It's not a question, it's actually just a small correction on page 10. The house sound reference guide used to be the house sound marine reference guide. They have changed their names to Marine Stewardship Initiative. So it would be good to reflect. So when they submit the papers, so it should read house sound Marine Stewardship Initiative.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions, Council? As I say, we're familiar with this budget. We've gone through it, and I think that the change that was made sense and provides more funds for our capital side. So, okay, seeing none, we'll go on to the next report, and this is the report on item 2 on the 3.2, and this is the Director of Finance or Infrastructure Services. Sorry. And preliminary 2022 to 2026 general capital budget. Mr. Newman, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Very appreciate it. So last time we met, council had a few changes that they wanted to see on the budget, and staff also made some additional changes that are detailed in that report, which I will be going over. So at this point, the list of projects that we have on our revised spreadsheet leaves us roughly 82,000 in excess of the taxation we currently have available. So that will be part of your discussion, obviously. So just to quickly go through the report, a lot of these things are worth noting. So for starters, the building maintenance, we've moved from C classification to A as it addresses safety issues, and this is not going to address all safety issues. We're just prioritizing, but still it gives us an indication of where some of our challenges there are in our assets. The Trail Active Transportation Plan, we moved it at request from 2023 to 2022. However, the spreadsheet wasn't picking up the grant portion, so the budget's actually $40,000 with still the same $20,000 funded by taxation. And council may want to consider whether or not you want to set aside the additional $20,000 in case the grant application is unsuccessful, and we'll leave that for you to discuss along with the other things. So we added a number of items, the development application form review, natural asset plan summary, and tree planting plan and map. None of them are huge items. Much of the work will be done in-house. Although we didn't discuss it at the last meeting, we split up the Beachcomber Bridge between engineering 1 year and construction the next. Glass for traffic calming, we reduced the budget from 49,000 to 41,000 to reflect the discussion about the use of planters instead of cast in place curbing to narrow the road. Both the 49 or the 41 include speed cushions. So if we haven't got that quite right, then let us know. But at this point, that's what's in there. And again, hopefully we'll be able to narrow that number down by the end of the meeting. Added the homeless support, a couple other items there, the playground repairs. The tennis courts, we also reduced from 80,000 down to 47. And so we're splitting up the repairs that need to be done to the court, but the repairs that are proposed to be postponed aren't within the playing surface. They're off to the side. So it will allow the tennis courts to be fully playable. We had missed adding the Gower Point traffic calming options. Recall that when the developer of Gospel Rock came forward with their plans for the traffic calming. Council had indicated an interest in pursuing some other options. And so the $34,000 funded by taxation is just to investigate those additional traffic calming options and provide an impact to the town and potentially ministry roads to implement the calming. It'll provide a rough estimate on costs as well, but it will not cover any design. Again, we added the homelessness support for $20,000 annually from 23 to 26. So that's in addition to the 2022 work. And then you can see the last few, we moved from 22 to 22 to 2023. So as I mentioned, leaves us a shortfall at this point of 82,250, which represents, I can't remember, slightly above 2%, I believe, tax increase. So with your permission, I'll share my screen. We will put up the full list of capital projects, and the rest of the meeting's yours to discuss.
Thank you, Mr. Newman, and appreciate the addressing the changes the council brought forward. I have a couple questions before I open the floor to council. One is on the Glassford Road traffic calming, 34,000. I'm looking at I think I'm looking at line number. Maybe that's Gower Point Road. Traffic calming options 34,000. Line number 48, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of that, so that's, and I appreciate that was the work that council requested over and above the required work that the developer was to do. Is that correct?
That's correct. The developer has met, or as far as the design goes, it has met their obligations.
Okay.
And there were some other suggestions put forward, I believe, largely by TRAC. The one involved a traffic light and alternating one-way traffic. Another one was one way in one direction, no traffic light. The other one was complete closure. And the fourth was a a cyclist activated light.
Yeah, right.
So
yeah, I'd like to encourage council someday, if you're going to Vancouver, instead of going via the highway off the ferry, take Marine Drive. And as you go around Marine Drive, that first probably 5 kilometers before you get to Thunderbird Marina, take a look at that area there. It's very similar to going around Gospel Rock. It's tight. It's well signed. The traffic speed is lowered. It requires all vehicles to respect each other, including cycles. And there's a lot of cycling goes down through there. One thing I did notice was there was an oversized load. It was required to have a pilot vehicle through that section, but buses go through there, bicycles go through there, trucks and cars go through there. It's a very tight portion of road, but they do it, and they do it presumably safely. There may be the occasional accident through there, and I'm not sure that we need to do a heck of a lot more than what they've done there. And that's been there for years, and they'll probably never change because it's up against a solid rock wall and the ocean on the other side. But it is managed, and it's not a great big traffic calming or traffic management solution. It is just using the road that they are given and driving through there. So before you kind of make big changes, take a look at that. It's managed by signs and speed limit. And I think we could easily do that through this area here. Councilor Ledwick?
Actually, maybe I'll hold off. You said you had a couple of comments, Mayor Beamish? Maybe I'll-
Yeah, the other one that I'd highlighted here was the Glassford traffic calming, and that was at $41,000. And that's down a couple lines further. It looks like line 52, trying to follow across there. And I had actually thought, Mr. Newman, that was covered by grant, the Glassford work. Is that not correct?
Not entirely, no, because the grant has pretty much it has more or less 6 projects, and each one of those has its own budget. And so the only budget that we had for this one was for closure, line painting, and signage. And so no, there's if we put more money towards Glassford, then we're shorting ourselves on some of the other works to do.
Okay, assuming that more money will be more different solutions, I guess. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the questions I had. Councilor Ludwig?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Beamish, and thank you, Director of Infrastructure. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for adding a column that actually identified the different staff members that will be tasked with leading all the different projects on the work plan. That's really, really helpful for me. I'll save my comments on that for later, but I've got the first document open, and I just wanted to speak to line number 2, the trail and active transportation plan, where the change that was made, and that staff is proposing that you're moving it to this year with a budget of 20,000 funded by taxation in case grant application is unsuccessful. I would like to put the idea out there, and I'll make a motion of this if it's appropriate now to do so. But I would like to propose that we do maintain that 20,000 on our budget, regardless of whether or not we're successful in our application, and that we strike I hate to say it, but an active transportation committee of some sort to at least review the proposals that are currently on our work plan. From what I understand, we've got 5 to 6 projects on the docket right now for a total of, I don't know what we're at, I don't know, almost $1 million or something at least, or no, $700,000. And there's still all sorts of questions and discussions going on about what exactly it is we're proposing to do. From what I can tell, and this totally makes sense now in retrospect, naturally staff had to apply for this funding through the provincial fund. And when they did so, they had to identify a project scheme of some sort with a proposed budget in order to apply for the money. That's what any application process requires. So obviously, I mean, I don't recall seeing this funding application. I'm not sure if others recall seeing it, but I would like us to review this funding application, understand the budget for each of the projects that are currently on our work plan for the year, and have an open conversation with the community about what we've been funded to do and whether or not this is something the community is supportive of, and, start having a conversation about how to move forward with these 6 projects. In addition to an active transportation plan, in retrospect, we should have developed an active transportation plan ahead of time so that all these options were discussed before we applied for funding. Of course, we haven't done that yet, and so now we're kind of chasing our tail. But let's just do both. Let's just try to correct this now. Let's have a community conversation about the projects we're currently funded for and make sure we get the plan right for these 6 projects. And then let's also develop an active transportation plan for the future going forward. So, well, just to summarize, I'm proposing we keep the 20 grand on the budget and that we form an active transportation committee to review the 6 projects that are on our current work plan. And then that can kind of slide into the development of an active transportation plan when and if we get the funding through an application grant.
Any response on that, Director?
Yes, we did bring this to council. That's got some maps associated with it. It was applied for, I'm guessing maybe 3 years ago. It was, we've already been working with TRAC on this. These are specifically to join up existing active transportation routes. So we've got pieces here and pieces there, and this was specifically focused on filling those in. and quite honestly, we've already put forward the plan. We're already working on it. We already have engineers putting in time and money on this, and we've started physical works out there as well. So happy to share that with the public again. But a lot of these projects as well were previously identified, and we had wrapped them up into a single project with these six projects. So maybe in choice of words, I don't believe there's anything to correct, but we are more than happy to share this information that's been shared before if you would like to in some other manner or venue.
Is that available on our website, Mr. Newman, or is that something you maybe revise, shipping that back out to council to have a look at?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's on there, but regardless, I'll check.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Lumley?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think it's a great idea, but I would suggest, I guess if like maybe an active transportation advisory board, like maybe people that are, I don't think we like council or has to get involved, but they could report to council. I mean, there's enough people in this community that are interested and active in this area. And I think that's a good idea, because if you do put something on the, I think what Councillor Lagwood's saying is it's like a line item, like somebody, like a committee, if you form like an advisory board or something, at least they know like every year, each one of their actions or their suggestions that obviously will go through infrastructure and council have some possibility, because we've committed to it beforehand. So I think it's a good idea, however it's structured. I mean, I know that we've got tons of committees and stuff, and maybe Mr. Newman would like to sit on the board. But anyway, I think it has merit, because if you do set some monies aside every year from our budget, I don't mean from grants or anything, but from our budget, then I think it would give people incentive to work on it.
Thank you. Councillor Newman or Mr. Newman?
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. Just as a further point on that, we on the grant itself is that we are meeting with TRAC. We've already had 2, maybe 3 meetings, I'm not sure, on each project as we refine details and get their input on it. So we're doing that, and council may not be aware, but we do meet with TRAC every year prior to budget time to discuss upcoming projects, as well as any concerns or projects that the TRAC feel they would like to see pursued. So I don't know exactly the full makeup of TRAC, but in a way there is some community input there already.
Councillor, I saw all 3 of you, so I'm going to go back to Councillor Ladwood, Councillor Lumley, and then Councillor D'Andrade.
Thank you. I am aware that TRAC meets with the Director of Infrastructure and others from the group, so I do know that is occurring. To me, I see this as an opportunity for not just TRAC, but other members of the community to be part of some type of advisory board, like Councillor Lumley was saying, but also a forum for the community to be continually aware of kind of the different options being proposed, and a forum for different options to be proposed in a transparent and open dialogue session that the community has access to. It just seems to me like here we are once again, just even to your 2 questions earlier, Mayor Beamish, asking questions and whatnot about active transportation projects that are on our proposal, on our work plan, that have been for a year or 2. And it just seems like every time one of these projects comes up, there's a lot of community conversation about it, and a lot of community dialogue, and a need for more consultation. And I just feel like if we kind of formalize some type of structure, it'll give the community an opportunity to to become more informed, to hear about the options being discussed, to discuss the options. I just think that this is enough of a contribution or enough of a component of our work plan that it deserves more community dialogue around it.
What we'll look at doing is perhaps asking the CAO to come up with a terms of reference for a committee, because that's what it is. And then there'll have to be a council member on that committee as well. So that, go to Councillor Lumley.
Does just maybe I don't know, just a question, but is it active transportation, does it also include like our current transportation? Like just maybe we should think about, I mean, expanding a network of trails and bike paths. It's awesome, but what about the ones that already exist? Like, and I mean, there's a little bit of bias in my comments, but you know, people are in through Weingarten Park, the trail, the boardwalk. I mean, it's really clearly not defined where bikes can go and where people can walk. And, you know, there's now with the advent of electric bicycles, like, I don't know how that impacts it as well, but, you know, people on these electric bicycles that are on bike paths, they're really flying, eh? Like they're not pedaling, they're under power. So I don't know how that's approached in the active transportation plan, but yeah, even if we concentrate just not on new stuff, but on maintaining or making it clear what the old things are, I'd be, you know, I think we should give a little bit of focus on that as well.
Councillor Diandrat.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thanks for suggesting the committee. I was going to make a suggestion. I think I support what Councillor Ledwig said about track. Since you know, we started our mandate, there's a lot of discussion, even outside of this platform, with track, and there's a lot of competing interests, right? For example, right now the school, even though there is on North Road, there's the bike path, but it's not the bike path that the school would like to see to create sustainable transportation, school transportation, right? And on the point that Councillor Lumley said, with new forms of transportation that use the alternative routes. So I think it deserves a bigger planning. I fully agree. And I like the idea of the committee, because then it is well discussed and we have a report it can bring to council, and it brings a lot of transparency on the diverse interests. Another comment I would like to make with the $20,000, I understand that we can ask half of the 50, so 25. So if we are going to a bigger plan, it's pretty much redoing a plan, right? Updating a plan, and considering that we have even the thing with electric bike, for example. Are we creating different rules? Maybe electric bikes won't be allowed in certain kinds of trails or whatever. Why are we not asking the 25? I'm just curious, why the 20?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't answer that one. I don't know if the CAO can. That wasn't established by me, that number.
Okay, perhaps.
Sorry.
CAO, you have a response on that?
That number came, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, where the number came from, but yeah, so my understanding was that that was our share of a future grant, so that to be prepared for that provincial grant. So that
Our share of the grant, yeah.
our share of it.
Okay, well, you know, what I hear council saying is they want this left in the budget, and they want, but we also like a committee to be struck, and perhaps that would be a keep track of that. Well, we can make a motion to that effect, that council, that the committee request council to establish a active transportation committee with terms of reference to be developed and returned to council for consideration. Councillor Ladwig moved that, seconded by Councillor Kroll. Any further discussion on that? Councillor Diendrad?
Not on that, but on the grant. If we can apply for if the maximum amount is $50,000, so we can get half, why our share would be 20? I just want to understand why we don't try to apply for the 25,000, just because this is basically the entire town's plan, redoing everything, revising everything, and considering new sorts of transportation, including our commitment of being age-friendly, right? Because we have scooters, a lot of people are, the province itself is incentivizing mobility. So I almost feel that we should go. I mean, this is just a suggestion. I don't understand why we are going just for 20.
Councillor Kroll?
If memory serves me correctly, it's a matching funds. So whatever we apply for, we have to match it.
Councillor Ludwig?
Councillor DeAndretti, I just want to say, if you want to make a motion to move it to 25, I would support that. If that's
We have a motion on the floor.
Oh, right.
Yeah, okay. Anybody want to speak to that motion? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, now you can make another motion. If anybody wants to raise the amounts, it's additional. This is raising taxation, but that's okay. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Our 50% is 20,000. So yeah. Councillor Diendrad?
Yeah, I'll make the motion because my concern is, any project, any consultant that we get, there's so much money involved. I'd rather, if this is a plan that's going to last for the next 10 years, I'd rather, and we might not even, at the end, we might apply just for 20, but I just want to have the backup and not compromise the plan. That's it.
I guess clarify what I heard from the Director of Infrastructure. We have a plan. So now it's I'm not sure that we need to hire a consultant to redo the plan as much as you need a committee to provide comment and direction on the plan as it goes forward. Is that not what I'm hearing? Have you looked at the plan recently to see if it's out of date, Councillor Ludwig?
I have not seen an active transportation plan on our website under the active transportation plan heading.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I have seen maps and I've seen discuss, some narrative stuff there, but I have yet to find a document that's called the Gibson's Active Transportation Plan.
Okay. All right. Mr. Newman was going to send that to council and forward that so that the committee would look at that. Now, if you raising the funds, that's fine. Yeah, Councilor, Mr. Newman.
What I was going to forward was the information on the grant. The grant works, not an active transportation plan. I'm not. That's more of a planning document. And I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't know where that one is at. But we can certainly look into that for you.
Yeah.
To send you the information that we've got.
Okay. So what I'm hearing the motion then, Councillor Diendrad, you want to increase that amount in the budget line of to $50,000 and with 25,000 by taxation. Is that correct?
Well, our part is 25, right? We are not. Yeah.
With 50%. Yeah.
Yeah, 50%. I mean, we might, Mayor, we might not even when we crunch the numbers. I'm just concerned that we want to, if we are doing consultation and things. Yeah. I know our plan. It's fairly old. And then there has been new development, new things, new incentive. No. I think we talk about being age friendly, but when we plan routes, we need to consider. And anyway, so I think $5,000 may go the extra mile to do a more. comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I just want to get the number right, and then the terms of reference, we'll talk about what the committee is responsible to do. So that, okay. Okay, so Councillor Kroll, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Beamish. Just for clarification, with the shuffling as was requested by council last week, what we're now looking for, or what we're now faced with is an $82,250 shortfall over what we were presented last week. Is that correct? So this would be on top of what the Director of Finance has indicated as a 2% increase in tax. This would be an additional 2%, give or take, on top of that. Is that correct?
Director of Finance, can you answer that?
Yes, so yes, based on the preliminary information that was provided earlier, that $82,000 is additional taxation funding that would be required to be collected through a tax increase, and that's about 2.2%. And what I'm hearing is the committee wants to add 5,000 to that to top up, take advantage of the active transportation grant funding available. So now we'd be looking at additional just over $87,000 required in additional taxation funding. And that's about 2.5%, not quite 2.5% tax increase, but it will depend on where council lands on the rest of the items that are taxation funded. So
exactly, yeah. Okay, thank you. Councillor Kroll?
Just in follow-up, so this would be an additional 2-point-something% on top of the 2% that we've been presented to date. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So right now the
Thank you.
budget provides a base 2%. And by doing that, it covers operations, all the other items that council has requested, and provides partial funding for $192,000 for capital so far. But we'd need, right now, the listing shows you need about 274. So yeah, so it would be above the 2% already approved or projected.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. Yeah, no, we'll just keep track of that. As I say, there may be some things that will reduce in the budget, and that's what this process does, up and down. So I think. Okay, and so we passed a motion to ask council to direct staff to prepare terms of reference for an active transportation committee. So that will go then from this meeting to council at some point as we go through the process. Next item, Councillor Diandrade.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, talking about increase, I would like to speak to the DPA too. I have always been concerned that the amount established was not sufficient. I mean, every DPA update has been way more than that. And I really don't understand why the environmental DPA has such a reduced budget compared to the other ones. If we are doing field work and revising concepts and projects and concepts in place. And if we want to increase, if the environment now, we need to be more careful. We want to become more resilient, and therefore we might have to even extend certain areas or protect others. We talk about corridors. I really don't think that $25,000 may be sufficient. And I understand that the idea of combining the two DPAs was to see if there's a stretch, but I'm concerned because if DPA 1 was initially established to be $60,000 based, I believe, in research, how can suddenly just because we do the two together stretch? I'm just concerned with the goal, and actually we also, last time we were going to approve, and then there was some suggestions from we had some expert advice, and we are going to have another meeting. So I would like really to have consideration to that. I understand that the budget might have to increase, but we are talking about vital things: climate change, biodiversity loss. It's the most It's the highest topic if you talk about impacts of climate change. Biodiversity loss is number one, and we are suffering already the impacts of climate change. So I would like consideration in this regard. Perhaps we have to leave other projects, but I cannot see why suddenly an update can only cost $25,000 while a bylaw, which is basically a desktop project, it's costing, for example, the STR, right? The update is costing way more. So that's my concern. And I don't have a figure, but I would like to put at least $10,000 on top of that. And with even some consideration if we need to stretch, because we cannot do halfway. We cannot do like just a middle update. We either do a update based on the goals that we have been discussing, or it doesn't make sense.
Other comments, Council? Councilor Lumley?
Well, I know we're like knee deep in this process, but it would be helpful if, I guess if you're going to add money somewhere, you just alluded to it. It's got to be taken away from somewhere, or else we're going to just keep increasing taxation. I don't know if Councillor D'Andrade had any notion of where that 10,000 might come from, or 20,000, maybe 50. I don't know, but it'd be neat to just kind of get a feel for, like, if you want to increase something somewhere, like, let us know where you want to decrease something somewhere else, and maybe it'll work.
Councilor Ludwig?
This is good. This is like workshop planning here. This is good. So to Councillor Lumley's point, I think he's absolutely right. And that's what the whole point of today's exercise is. And I think we all know that through the course of the year, I mean, these are just estimates, people's best guesses as to what things are going to cost based on past experience. So I don't know, could we maybe shave a little bit off the pavement improvements for this year if we have a bunch of policy work that we're trying to get done? There's just one question. There's one activity under the Director of Planning, which is, I believe, something I've been pushing for and feel strongly about, which is the review of the development application forms, and it's got a price tag of $5,000. I think some of these items can be done in-house, and I think staff even believe they can be. I'm not sure what the budget number is associated with them, but it just seems to me there's some flexibility in here, you know, as you go down the list.
You will always find at the end of the year, normally find at the end of the year, you have a surplus somewhere because projects that couldn't get done, or projects that were overestimated, and then there's projects that are underestimated. So that at some point in time, it nets out to a surplus. But it's hard at this stage in time to kind of project those. The bigger scope change, the bigger change comes from changing scope. And do we have to do all this? Can we do all this? Is it literally possible for us to do all this? So that's where that comes into play. And maybe let me ask a question about a project that I see on the list I'm not familiar with, and that's the Beachcomber Bridge. What is that project?
So the sorry, I was getting an echo there.
Yeah.
A couple years ago now, one of the culverts on Beachcomber Lane,
Okay,
large diameter one there, failed, and so rather than replacing it with a culvert, we're replacing it with an aluminum bridge.
right. Okay. And yeah, that is still blocked off, that lane. Yeah, that's one that needs to be done. I mean, you're right. It's a couple of years ago that's been sitting there. It's a, yeah.
And one more thing we heard previously, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
There was a mention about the pavement rehabilitation. It's a different funding source. So you know, if you're looking for, you need to look at the taxation versus taxation as far as adding on to taxation and taking away. So that's in this column here. I'll highlight those in yellow. So
Yeah.
you can see which ones are funded by taxation, if you like.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you. Could you go down that a little further? I'm not ignoring Councilor D'Andrade's question. I'm looking for money. And stop there. The Chester Creek monitoring, Chester Creek studying, are those the studies we asked for relative to the stormwater flows?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And so the monitoring portion is covered partially by DCCs.
Is there no opportunity to cost share that with highways and the regional district?
Haven't approached them about cost sharing.
In Chester Creek, we a tributary of Chester Creek comes through the town, but it also flows into the town from the regional district and out of the town, the highway. So
this is focused on collecting information about the flows in and out of town itself. So the area of the creek that we are responsible for, or not responsible for, but is within our jurisdiction and where we discharge stormwater to.
Okay. But if we don't look on both sides of that, like the water coming in and then the impact going out, we're not going to have a full picture.
That's what we're doing.
Okay, and is the regional district not going to participate in that, or highways?
No, we haven't asked the regional district to, and haven't asked either party to participate. And you won't quite get dollar for dollar, because if you did get some contribution from highways, for example, the DCC portion would drop. So it's just, we can only fund from the portion that is the town's responsibility.
Okay.
I'm not saying that's an excuse not to seek out, but I think that this studies, although it is focused on impacts to Chester Creek, it is more focused on what we can do and what is flowing into the town from the regional district and out of the town into the highways culvert.
Yeah, okay. I would certainly appreciate it if there was some involvement of those parties in that process. Councillor Lumley, then Councillor Ledwig.
Yeah, that makes like zero sense to me. Like, why you'd spend money on a project where the inflow from one area, they're not doing anything. Like I would cross this right off the budget, but not to be so brash, but like that just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, what's the point of examining this flow here when all your problems might be, I guess, maybe upstream, or, I mean, it doesn't, if you could, like, I would, that's a good point by the mayor. I think, I don't know why we'd spend money on that if other people around us aren't going to spend money on it as well. So that would just be that's my thoughts. I could be off base, but you can let me know.
Councillor Ledwig.
I just noticed the Director of Infrastructure wanted to respond to Councillor Lumley. Maybe let him have that chance, and then I'll go.
Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
Certainly. So oversimplifying things a little bit, we have water that flows largely from the regional district side of the town, so north of Reed, flows into the town, picks up water along the way from various developments and properties. So Parkland is one of them, IGA Mall is another, Tim Hortons and that complex is another. And then the water flows out of the town. And so the difference between the flow in and the flow out is the town's contribution. And that contribution is largely increased by development. And so what we're looking at is to determine overall what our contributing area to Chester Creek what sort of return there is on that. So our current standard for Parkland is a 1 in 100 year. I don't know what the regional districts was at the time when IGA was built, but it was probably 1 in 10. And our 1 in 10 has changed as well. And so what we're looking at is overall, what sort of, how much water are we sending to the creek? Is it like a 1 in 50 year flow? And then does council wish to, as far as our portion goes, does council wish to reduce that storm flow to the creek by building another pond or what have you? And we can also take that information. I mean, you're 100% right that flows above us contribute to Chester as well. And there's a bit more work as far as the regional district goes, because they don't have any bylaws in place to regulate flows from development. And the ministry, all they're interested in really is conveyance. Mind you, development does have to meet ministry standards. And so the other piece that has been really on the books for ages is who is responsible for this flow. And that's taken up a huge amount of both staff and council time, defending, for instance, Parkland, saying, no, we're retaining 1 in 100 year on site. And one of the goals here is to establish what is it really that the town's contributing, and then be able to say that. So it's going to be able to, rather than speculating and hypothesizing as to where the water is coming from, Gibson's is doing their bit and saying, this is how much is coming from us.
Yeah, it's not a solution. It's a measurement we're looking at right now.
It's a measurement, but it will come up with solutions as well.
Yeah. Okay.
And it will review the older developments that are in that catchment area to determine even whether their initial stormwater detention that they were required to put in is still functioning as it should.
I would also like to know if there's any constriction on that creek as it goes through the regional district down below the town, because what is causing the backup? Is it strictly that the creek has not been maintained and the flow is capable of flowing? I don't know, because if that's causing the flooding, that's quite a long stretch of creek there. But hey, if this answers the question, and if we're comfortable that it's all on us right now, then I guess I look at the Delcan report that was done a few years ago, and there was a study done, and quite a big study. I've ever right in my hands here, and that study looked at all of the watershed assessments for integrated stormwater management plan, and for East Roberts Creek, Elphinstone, and West Howe Sound, and it was done by the Ministry of Transportation and the Sunshine Coast Regional District. What's happened to it? Why are we spending more money? But we'll look. Okay, so anyway, I get carried away. So, Councilor D'Andrade, we still haven't found your extra money.
Yeah, I see that the Source to Sea project has money from DCCs. Is it possible? Perhaps to fund part of DPA to update?
No.
To study.
Sorry, but
yes, it's not listed on our DCC program, so you can't just you can't reallocate DCC funds to another project if it's not already listed on our plan.
The provincial regulation. It's not so much a town's choice in this case, Councillor.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I mean, we just have to add it to text. Councilor Ladwig, go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish up her question.
I was just going to say, if Councilor D'Andrade wants to make a motion to add more funds to the DPA 2 update, we just have to add that. And the difficulty is we, somebody put $25,000 down there, probably the director of planning. And we don't know better than her, but we are going to assume that we do and add more money to it. And that's a concern I have. Councilor Diandrad, then Councilor Lumley.
Thank you. Mayor Beamish, even for example, the urban forest assessment is quoted in 23, and we're not talking about the whole town. It's just assessment of the urban forest. So this is an update that you would assess. We are looking for ways to increase resilience. There's a lot of assessment. We talk about species. What are we seeing in this forest? I mean, there's field work. It's impossible that will cost just $25,000. So I think it's just even I haven't done the RFP, but I mean, it's just based on all the other projects. I mean, why DPA one update would be 60,000? I mean, you're dealing with it's biologists and geologists more expensive than biologists. I think if you're getting someone with great expertise, it's on the same line. So I mean, to me, actually, I don't really understand how the 25 came up.
Mr. Brown, I see you're unmuted.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to address that query by Councillor Dandria, although I wasn't involved in the detailed calculations, I did have discussions with our Director of Planning, and that amount was obtained in discussions with our consultant, if it can be combined with the other DPA review. However, as has been noted, there's been, Mayor Beamish alluded to this as well, that with scope creep comes an increase in these costs. So she was concerned that the 25,000 would not be enough if additional scope was added, or if the two DPA programs were tendered separately.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Ludwig.
Thank you. Okay, so I do have a few comments on a few projects specifically, but I'd like to kind of step back for a minute and talk about the work plan overall. During our last meeting, we talked about, or I raised the fact that I was a bit concerned about the magnitude of the work on the plan for our staff to complete in 1 year. I totally appreciate the Director of Infrastructure coming forward with adjustments and staff identification to outline how all these projects can be met. But I still can't help but feel concerned that the amount of work that's on this plan as it is right now might impact our service to the development community. And when I say development community, I'm not just talking about commercial developers. I'm talking about mom and pop folks that are trying to build a house or trying to put through an application of some sort and then getting their services met in a timely fashion. So I've done a little bit of homework, pulling out some information from the table that the Director of Infrastructure has provided us. And I just want to share this with Council in case you haven't done this homework yourself. So the Capital Projects Manager right now, according to this work plan, has 12 projects on her work plan for a total for more than $2,024,000 worth of value. Director of Infrastructure has 9 projects on his work plan for almost a total value of $1 million. The Natural Assets Manager has 9 projects on her work plan for just over $2.1 million. In comparison to the Director of Planning, who has only 6 projects on her work plan for a value of $155,000. And our Planner 1 and our Planner 2 do not show up on this work plan. The reason I'm raising this is because, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but this is just about, complaints that we've received in the community about where some of these applications end up sitting for longer than people feel is appropriate, or the consultation that's taking place, and some of the concerns we've heard from the community. It's not finger pointing, it's about workload. When the Director of Planning only has 6 projects on her work plan worth $155,000, and our planners aren't currently showing any compared to the number of projects in the Infrastructure Services Group, it's not surprising to me that sometimes support for the community projects end up falling don't get responded to in a timely manner.
Councilor Ludwig, if I would just remind you though that the planner and the planning and the planners are dealing with the George Hotel, all the major projects that are coming and the ones that are going to come next week that we
Those are
don't even know
direct-
about yet. And that's they don't do initiatives. They do they're responsive.
They have to
bylaws.
respond to applications as well, just like the Director of Infrastructure's group has to. They all play a role.
Yeah, but they're totally different functions in the organization.
But when it comes to an application, a DPA application or a subdivision application or a development application, both units have to support the project.
But they're not budgeted that way. You don't budget for
I know
budget
that.
director of planning for to be as the improvement officer. That's just a job that she does when the application comes in.
But what my point is, Mayor, is that's also just the job of the capital projects or the Director of Infrastructure. And I'm looking at their workload and I don't know where they can fit that in because it's full of projects.
May I, Mayor Beamish?
Go ahead.
I think one way of looking at it is how often you see the Director of Planning's face in front of you in comparison to mine. So they are scrambling like crazy, dealing with building and other development applications. They'll go through development permits, they'll go through development variance permits, they'll go through building permits, they'll go through rezonings, they'll go through OCPs, and then eventually gets to us and we have one application. And so there's far more time spent by planning staff on non-capital items. However, regardless of what I say there, I hear your overall concern. And if you were to cut some capital works from the general list, and we can look at the taxation ones, the ones that are funded by taxation, and say these are the ones that could be postponed, ask me, let me know what ones that, so out of here, what ones you would, I suppose, question as to whether or not it will be worth cutting. I'll let you know whether or not there is an impact to that or what the impact is, and we can go from there. Because I have a long list of bylaws and policies that I need to get in front of council, and that's predominantly what my workload is. And it's not like we have a shortage of work, as you say. So if there was a desire to drop that 82,000 down by eliminating projects, as I say, just ask me about any of those, and we can look at what we can or what the repercussions would be of cutting those projects. And I've just filtered it by taxation, and these projects right here are the ones that are actually, maybe it'd be better if I did it in the current year. So here are the taxation funded ones, because I think really in a way that's what we're looking at is how do we impact the taxation. And then I can filter out by there. So those are the ones that are being I'm guessing that the ones by the capital project coordinator are being funded from projects other than, or from funding sources other than taxation. But you can see on mine here, I might as well do it.
Can you expand it a bit, Dave, please?
Even make it larger?
Yes, please.
I'm shrinking it down. Yeah, how's that?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
So, oops, that wasn't the one I meant to do. So these are my projects that are funded by taxation. And so the DCC bylaw is updating it not only for the costs of, or the cost estimates, but also to add certain projects to the DCC program so that we have alternative funding sources for those. And So the repercussions of cutting that, it could be postponed for a year, but we would be potentially not collecting the right amount of DCCs to do our DCC projects. Subdivision bylaw update, that one's been on time and time again, and these are our standards for development, including stormwater management, which I know is a concern of council. The Gower Point traffic calming options, that's the one that council wanted to see, looking at alternatives other than what the developer's engineer has recommended, and then Glassford traffic calming. So those are the ones that are on my plate. And as far as the staff goes, those two we feel are most important. These two, we understand that there's more council interest in that. So just going to the natural asset tech, her projects are so that one drainage improvement annual is to deal with that wall that's leaning over into the creek. It's the beginning of the urban forest assessment, the natural asset plan summary, which is actually a fairly small project, and the tree planting plan and map that council had asked for, and monitoring, overseeing the monitoring program for the Chester Creek. So those are all the ones that are in infrastructure services that are funded by taxation. And so those are the ones, if you're looking to reduce infrastructure services workload and reduce taxation, then those are the ones that could potentially be up for grabs. If you want to look at those separately as separate issues or things you're trying to do, then we can just look at infrastructure services regardless of where the funding is coming from and cut some of the projects on that. So I'm just giving you some options that we can easily look at on the screen, and let you guys figure out where you would like to go on that.
Okay, go to the CAO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just trying to understand a little bit more from the concern from council is around that money question that you were mentioning earlier. Like, are we not going to be able to get all of these? So what are the ones that are most important, or is it concern about making sure that there's sort of even amount of workload being shared amongst staff?
This is not a workload document, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't
Councilor
think so
Ledwidge?
either, because I didn't think that would be helpful, but I'm just curious what are we trying to get at in the end here, if we can.
Councilor Ledwidge?
All I was getting at is that we've heard complaints from folks in the development community that aren't getting their application serviced in a timely manner. And
Yeah.
I can't help but look at it. And so maybe, so you're saying it's not a workload document, and I respect that and I appreciate that. When I look at this and I'm being asked to approve such a large Excel table of work, I can't help but go, whoa. How are we going to be able to do all this and still service the development community? That's all.
I think one thing that council could look at a policy in terms of response times for applications and try to, say, if you look at Squamish, last time I looked, they were 6 months on responding to an application. That their city of Vancouver is higher than that, but we can say, okay, we want a response time of 3 months. What does that take? More staff?
Exactly. I
Yeah,
agree.
more staff, or less work. So that's the type of thing you can look at in that respect.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just, we certainly, it's not always the workload in terms of where the work is at. What we experienced, for example, last year was almost doubling in the number of applications that came in. Those folks are now going to need support through the development coordination process. That part we need to beef up, pardon the expression. We anticipate that, and then the other aspect of it is on the capital projects, because there's a lot of work that needs to be supported irrespective of what department is leading it. those are two areas that we see that we need to work on, depending on what the ultimate list is here. So there's two separate areas we need to tackle.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the one area here that, quite frankly, it's kind of a pet interest of mine. I don't hear the community yelling and screaming about it. Is a dog park. I mean, we got $45,000 in here for a dog park consultation and funding. I'm not hearing the community say we need a dog park, and maybe we have to simply set that aside and say, until we get that kind of request from the community, is it a priority? And is it something we need to be doing? And in that sense, from a taxation perspective, we could take $20,000 off the list or reallocate that somewhere else. And I'm not uncomfortable with that. I mean, I've always thought a dog park would be important, but people seem to manage. And as long as we can continue to double up on Brothers Park, which seems to be the dog park, quite frankly, it also is the place where the kids slide and skid into first base and play soccer. It is it's got that mixed use, but if dog park and fencing is not a community priority, maybe it shouldn't be ours. Councilor Diandrade?
Thank you, Mayor. I think this may solve a lot of issues. Obviously, the DPA2, we need to get it right. And we will do combined with DPA1. So to me, it's almost not negotiable. If we hear from the community that they want a dog park, we can always do in 2023. So it's not that, right? I mean, so I think this will solve. And at the same time, I know a lot of issues we had. We basically lost 30% of our staff. We have recovered, maybe not 100%, but we are. Yeah. So we have some confidence that this year the projects will be better. The timeline, right, of everything will be.
I would certainly move the dog park 1 year ahead into 2023. I'll move that. Councilor Diandrade, second that.
Yes.
Any further discussion on that? Am I the only guy here who's got a dog? All in favor? Thank you. Okay. So that has freed up $20,000. Spend it. Councilor Ladwig, go ahead.
I'd also like to talk about the 200,000 for the tourism building removal and greenway projects. Is that something? I understand the building needs to come down, but do we have to pursue the gateway project this year?
It's a grant project. It's a grant application, so it's not being pursued unless we get the grant monies.
And we've already applied for the grant.
Yeah.
Councilor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. And thank you for the initiative with respect to the dog park, having been a former dog park owner. So of that 40,000, 20,000 was through taxation.
That's correct.
25,000 was from reserves. So can that $25,000 that was earmarked from reserves not be moved to cover the shortfall?
Corporate officer? Oh, sorry. Director of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, the $25,000 that's earmarked from reserve, that was actually last year, 2021's taxation funding for the dog park initiative. So when that money wasn't spent in 2021, it went forward, got transferred to reserve to be brought back this year. Council could choose to free up that money from a reserve and move it back into fund some other initiative. Then next year's taxation impact for dog park fencing would be for the entire amount. That would be the implication or the effect of that.
Councilor Kroll, follow up.
Just as follow up, I know there are a lot of dog walkers in the community, and a dog park. Maybe it's not a case of the tail wagging the council, but to that end, we had been talking about a 5% figure for policing, which we reduced to 2.5. I don't know that we were hearing a lot of opposition to the 5% for policing. We have a little more time there. So what I'm saying is there was this vision out there that there would be a 5% for policing, and people weren't totally upset with that. You know, I'm looking at some of these numbers, and they're not big numbers that say, okay, we cut that. It's only saving $5,000, and is it something we can really afford to drop? So, you know, maybe they're, you know, between just picking up 20,000 here and we're looking for sort of another 60,000. You know, it really is a juggling act, but at the end of the day, what can we live without?
Councilor
So,
Dean.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like, I appreciate you dropping the dog park, and I you know, subconsciously, I thought we are moving this to the DPA to update. I would like to have at least 40,000 for the update, so maybe we could move $15,000, and perhaps it won't be necessary. Perhaps we will save, but I would like to have the you know, the guarantee that we will do a proper DPA to update and to solve the, you know, what the DPA2 is supposed to. So perhaps I can make a motion to add $15,000 to DPA2.
You can make a motion.
Thank you.
Somebody want to second that motion? Seconded by Councilor Ladwig. Okay. Further discussion of that motion? Councilor Kroll, then Councilor Lumley.
just for clarification, we were $82,000 short, which was a 2-point-something tax increase on top of the 2% we already have. We've just taken, so we're still, even with eliminating the dog park, we're still asking for in excess of a 2.5 tax increase with Councillor Dandretti's motion.
We added $5,000 to active transportation already too.
Right, okay, so we're getting close to probably 3% tax increase on top of the 2% that the Director of Finance has already said we're asking for. I'm not disagreeing with her concern about the DPA too, don't get me wrong there. I'm just sort of saying we're now asking for a 3% tax increase.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilor Lumley, then Councilor Dean.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just curious, like where the $15,000, like, or we're just tossing money around, like does that review need an extra $15,000? Is that what we determined? Like, is that what the Director of Planning would suggest, that the DPA review, like whatever budget was that set improperly, or like in the first place, or like what? I'm just trying to grasp like the amount of money that you're adding to it. That's all. Like, I just don't, where did that figure come from?
Can I?
Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you. I think we have discussions. When she initially set up, it was based on whatever the scope they discussed. And then I presented a lot of points and for the scope. And then we had even a suggestion from another expert about, revising the scope. We are supposed to have this meeting. We have not had the chance yet, but hopefully we'll have very soon. It's supposed to be in April. And based on, even if you base in any other update, no update is 25. And I believe the 25, it's also a magic number that it doesn't need to come to council for, I think, for the project. So at the time, who knows, was some figure that was the cap. But realistically, we know, look at the update of the STR. It's $30,000. Any other update, DCC's update, $60,000. How can we have a DPA2 update for 25? It's just a logical thing as well. And we might not get there. But I would like to set aside to do a proper update.
Just remind you, the update of the STR, it's not an update for the STR, it's a new bylaw for the STR. We've gone
Yes,
through
no, sorry,
a
yeah.
significant consultation. I'm going to go to the Director of Finance because her hand's up, and then come back. Director of Finance?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted clarification. So at this point, what I've got is an increase to active transportation for 5, potential increase to DPA 2 for 15. That's basically bounced off by the reduction for the dog park for 20. So you're still at the 82.5 taxation portion.
We have not approved the 15 yet.
Oh, sorry, that's just proposed. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to question though was about the reserves for the dog park. So I understand you want to move the dog park to 2023.
Yeah.
If you want to reallocate those reserves to something else in 2022, I'll just need direction on that or clarification on that.
Yeah.
And that would free up $25,000.
It would. I don't tell you my philosophy on that is that when we tax somebody for a project and we go out and we justify it in taxation, we should not use that money for another purpose unless we simply say we are never going to do that project. It was a mistake. I would rather leave the reserve in there for dog park fencing for the future, as opposed to reallocating and telling people, we're going to tax you for dog park again, and we're going to keep on doing this because everybody likes a project, and it's a money maker for us. We shouldn't do that. So,
that's great.
So right now we haven't reallocated that 25,000.
Okay, that's good. Thank you for that clarification.
Go to Councilor Ladwig.
Yeah, just a point of clarity. I know Director of Infrastructure tried to clarify this earlier, but just again, so I noticed in this again, just trying to find money. So the Glassford Traffic Calming project, we have 41,000 allocated for it from taxation, but I thought 18,000 of that was coming from the grant, but I'm not seeing that 18,000 reflected. So have we already spent 18,000? That 18,000
through partly spent and partly through resolution. You already spent it, yes. So one, we've got the cost of the closure, and then 2, which is not much, but still.
Yeah.
And then 2 is the additional shoulder work that the council wanted to see along Gower Point Road for pedestrians.
But doesn't that come under the Gower Point Road traffic calming project?
No, different shoulder, different section.
Okay.
So Gower Point Road traffic calming was from Franklin Road moving towards Secret Beach as you drive out of town.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's
through the Gospel Rock area.
Yeah, and that's the part that the developer is responsible for, and the developers got a design for.
Right. Okay. Sorry.
Councilor Crowell.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. Just also for clarification, as I recall, when the 25,000 was allocated for DPA 2, that was paid to come out of reserves, but to be recovered to go back into reserves in 2023. So the question would be is if we increase it by another 15,000 or whatever amount we increase it by, we would only be looking at replenishing the initial 25 in the 2023 taxation year, is my understanding. And I'm just looking for confirmation on that.
That's correct.
Thank you, Director of Finance.
Okay, Councilor Dean Dredd, your motion wasn't seconded.
It was seconded by Councilor Ladwig.
Oh, sorry, it wasn't seconded by, I apologize. Okay, so it's on the floor. I'm not going to vote in favor of it. I would vote in favor of a lesser number, but I'm not going to vote in favor of 15,000. So I'll just let you know that, but I will call the question. All in favor of adding 15,000 to the DPA 2 review? Opposed? Okay, that passes. So we've added 15,000 there. And the reason being is I just don't see putting more than a 50% increase on a budget that we don't know that was put in there by one of our professional staff, simply because we don't think it's enough. I mean, I could look at any one of these things and say, oh, I don't think that's enough. I don't think you're going to get a car for I just bought a car. I'm not going to get a car for that amount. They're going to be more expensive next year. So, I mean, I think we do rely on staff to come up and make recommendations to us. And then we say, well, but we are 50% light on that. We're gonna add more money to it. But so be it. And the taxpayers will pay for it. Anything else council wants to do? So far, we are net what we came in the meeting with, which is fine. It's a 2.5% taxation. So that will increase taxation overall this year by 4.5%. Okay. We all agreed to go forward. That's the plan going forward. Councilor Diendrad?
I think we're gonna hear from we will be hearing from the community today, right?
We will be hearing from them today,
Yeah.
the 12 or so people who have agreed, who have signed up for the thing, yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we can continue the discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so that being said, is there anything further? We're receiving this report. Okay, we need to, we voted on those changes. Did we vote on the change to the dog park? We did, yeah. So is there anything we're missing, corporate officer or director of finance?
I can chime in, Mr. Mayor. So my understanding is that basically the changes made net out to no change. So additional taxation required, although it's a slightly different basket of projects, is still 82,200. And that technically is about a 4.22% tax increase overall, not quite 4.5, but basically 4.25, I think, is a good way to round it up. I just didn't want to make it too.
Yeah, no. Yeah, 4.22%. Okay. Okay, are we done with this item then? Is there anything further council wants to look at or discuss? We have a motion to receive this report. I believe we did, but I'm not sure. But since I'm not sure, let's move to receive. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Lumley, all in favor of receipt? Thank you very much. And we'll now go on. We're going to have a closed meeting shortly before we don't have any inquiries on that. Okay. But I guess they're going to come tonight. Okay. So we'll have a motion to close the meeting. Motion to close the meeting in accordance with section 90.